Welcome to Moving Forward Together, Family and Immigration Law Podcast.
Welcome back to Moving Forward Together, Family and Immigration Law Podcast. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're here with attorney Karen Ramirez Holt of Zuma Law. She represents individuals in removal proceedings with a focus on asylum and detention cases. As an immigrant herself, she brings personal perspective and litigation experience to helping individuals and families navigate immigration court. Today, we're talking about mandamus lawsuits in immigration cases. Karen will explain what a mandamus lawsuit is, when it may be used, and what families should understand when an immigration case has been delayed for a long time. Ms. Karen, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. So, Karen, to start, can you explain what a mandamus lawsuit is and how it fits into the immigration process?
Sure. So a mandamus is a federal lawsuit that can be brought under 28 USC Section 1361, which can compel a government agency to take a certain action. So in the context of immigration law, it's a federal lawsuit that a person can file when they have a pending petition with USCIS and that petition has been taking quite some time, or if it's just not being adjudicated. And even though there are certain statutes that exist that say that that particular petition needs to be adjudicated.
What kind of immigration cases most commonly lead to consider filing a mandamus lawsuit?
Well, there are several kinds, especially nowadays, but the most common ones that we've seen have been asylum, EADs or work permits, and naturalization.
What factors usually determine whether an immigration delay is considered unusually long?
So there are generally two different factors that we look at. One of them are the processing times. This could be at a local level. So let's say that a particular processing center, whenever somebody sends a petition to a particular processing center, if that processing center takes, let's say, 5 months for a particular type of petition, but now it's taking a year for that specific person, that's something that we probably look at. We also look at the publishing time frames that the USCIS has on their website. So again, if they say that a petition generally takes 18 months to adjudicate, but yours is taking 36, that's something that we might look at. Also, we also look at the statute. So if a statute, for example, for naturalization specifically, says that something needs to be adjudicated between 120 days and it's above those 120 days, then it's definitely something that we want to take a look at.
Many people assume in a mandamus lawsuit and they ask a judge to approve their immigration case. What is the court actually being asked to do in these lawsuits?
A mandamus lawsuit doesn't mean someone is getting their case approved. This is something very important to understand, and that I try to always stress to clients. A mandamus lawsuit is only to compel the agency to adjudicate a petition. So, in other words, the lawsuit is to have a judge order the agency to make a decision. It does not mean that the court is ordering the agency to approve your petition. So that's a very important difference.
So what tends to matter most when deciding whether, pursuing a mandamus lawsuit is worth it in a particular case?
There are a variety of factors, but one of them is to determine if the amount of time has passed is egregious enough or unreasonable enough from the time the person filed a petition to when the time that the person is considering filing the lawsuit. There are, of course, exceptions to this rule, such as extenuating circumstances. So let's say somebody is petitioning or sends a particular petition, but that person is gravely ill, and so they cannot wait the processing times for general processing times for this type of petition. They can ask for a mandamus if requesting an expedition doesn't do anything. Then you can ask for a mandamus or file a mandamus, excuse me. Another thing someone will also consider is if they're going to lose their jobs or their livelihood. I know this comes up a lot with work permits. Sometimes those are not adjudicated on time. And so the employer tells them like, hey, I'm going to let you go if I can't get this work permit renewed. And so sometimes that would be a good reason or reason enough to file a mandamus lawsuit or basically any other situation where an immediate action is necessary.
So before someone files this mandamus lawsuit, are there usually any efforts made to try to resolve or the delay of the immigration agencies first?
Yeah, so they can make direct inquiries to USCIS, though many of those have not been successful, unfortunately, especially recently. But that would be the first step, is to make an inquiry with USCIS. You can also ask for an expedition with USCIS. Another thing that people have done, and I sometimes suggest it to clients, is reach out to your local congressman. Sometimes they're able to reach out to USCIS on your behalf and either get an answer as to if this is being processed or where your status is at the time. Again, that is proving to be less and less effective these days, but generally that's something that we would be considering to do before filing the lawsuit.
So Karen, once a mandamus lawsuit is filed, what does the federal court process usually look like?
So once you file, the government usually has 60 days to respond. It's possible, these people are also swamped with a bunch of lawsuits. So it's possible that they're going to contact you, you know, day 58 and ask for some kind of an extension. And there's some negotiation that you can do with that. It's also possible that they might file a motion to dismiss for which you can respond to their motion. And then an oral argument will probably take place, and the judge can decide whether or not to dismiss the lawsuit. If it's not dismissed, then the government has to answer. They either have to deny or object or admit the allegations that are in the lawsuit. Then you enter the discovery, and that includes depositions. So now that's the time that you can compel the government to give you evidence as to what is causing a delay in a specific type of lawsuit. After the discovery, the court may hold a conference for a case management order. And that basically means that it's going to give you deadlines and it's going to give you rules behind those deadlines that you have to follow in order to have the lawsuit move forward. Then, if all else fails, you're going to keep going, and then you will have the trial. Now, this sounds very drawn out, and it's important to keep in mind that at any point this can end. So USCIS, it's rare that they'll have everything go to trial. It has happened, but it's not going to be very common. Usually what they'll do is that they will give you a resolution to your petition. So let's say, for example, you are requesting some kind of interview for your naturalization. Well, at any point in all that process and all those, A through G steps that I just said, they can go ahead and schedule the interview. Once they schedule an interview, you got what you wanted. You got what you set out to get with your lawsuit. So then the lawsuit becomes moot at that point.
So, do you have an example that, helps illustrate how a delayed immigration case, changed once a mandamus lawsuit was filed?
Sure. There's a couple where both of them are adjusting through their daughter, who is in the military. And so they file what's called a parole in place and their adjustment of status. And so mom gets her parole in place approved. She also gets her green card approved and issued. And she's basically on her way to citizenship. However, dad is still waiting for all his stuff, and they filed at the same time. They have basically the same facts, so they entered the same amount of times into the US, the same way, during the same time. Everything is pretty much the same. There is no criminal background, but somehow dad has fallen through the cracks. So in this scenario, filing a mandamus lawsuit would be ideal because you have something that you can point to. You could say, listen, there should be no reason why this guy's application is not being adjudicated when almost the identical application or petition has. And it's the same. It's, they're married to each other. Everything else, it's the same. They're petitioning through the same child, so there should be no reason why his is lagging. So that would be like an example of a mandamus lawsuit. And sometimes this can happen because an agent who is reviewing the case, they got through moms. They're like, okay, well, we're going to move mom forward, and they're going to start processing dad. But for some reason, whatever that may be, the officer is no longer there. So then in the shuffle of transferring, sometimes that gets lost. It falls through the cracks. It can happen. Not necessarily a nefarious thing. Sometimes, people are just so overwhelmed with so many of these petitions. So Or maybe something came up that we are not aware of, and so we need to bring something up to say, "Hey, this has been lagging for a while. What's going on?" And then they can say, "Oh, right, we were reviewing this case, and then this came up," and then you can address it that way. But that's why a mandamus lawsuit will kind of bring it at the forefront of like what's going on with this case.
So, Ms. Karen, for someone who is considering a mandamus lawsuit, what should they understand about what this type of case can and cannot accomplish?
So, first and foremost, it's important to understand that the goal of a mandamus lawsuit is not an approval, but an answer. So, depending on the situation, sometimes it's best to have an answer rather than continue waiting endlessly for USCIS to decide a case one way or another. And sometimes it's best to just keep waiting. So, at Zuma, we are happy to sit down and talk to you about your case and see if a mandamus lawsuit is right for you.
Amazing. Ms. Karen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
That wraps up today's episode of Moving Forward Together, Family and Immigration Law Podcast. To learn more about Karen and the legal services she provides at Zuma Law, visit zumalegal.com. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to like, subscribe to the show, and leave a review if you found this episode helpful, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.